that fair. Do you hear that?
Honey, it's probably just a drunken, semi-naked mock exorcism. Boys will be boys.
Candidates drink from the skull. Let's say it happens, okay? My response, so what?
Basically have a YouTube show telling people what we're getting from the demons these days.
Right, that would be fantastic.
No, my wife is a transsexual Satan worshiper.
Just from a layman's perspective, it looks to me like the exorcism was a miserable failure.
The strange case of Jimmy Savile. To many outside of the UK, Jimmy Savile is not really a well-known name, and actually it only became well-known, not to him being famous, but for him being infamous. So for decades and decades and decades, he was known as a famous Brit, a chilled-out entertainer, and subsequently a satanic pedophile necrophiliac. Basically, he embodies everything you've ever heard about elite pedophile rings, and then some. He's the guy on the inside, quite obviously. In fact, his specialty appears to have been to be a fixer, right? You get into trouble in those areas, and Jimmy will fix it for you. That was just stated quite openly, and it's only really after his death that all this stuff came out in the open, although insiders knew about it for decades and decades and decades. Those who knew about it and kind of despised him for it, and those who knew about it because they were involved with him in it. So now, listen to this clip from a radio podcast show where the person is just basically speaking about Jimmy Savile as a beloved childhood memory, and apparently not knowing anything besides that he was just a goofy comedian kind of guy.
Welcome to the TV thing. I am Chris Nelson, TV editor of Multimedia Mouth, and alongside me...
Greetings.
Alexander Page. Yes, right, we have to cover it first, and as sad as it is, Sir Jimmy Savile has passed.
What a character.
He is. I mean, I think the enduring image a lot of people have of him is of the Louis Theroux documentary and interview. Did you ever see that? I never
actually saw that. No, I watched a lot of Louis Theroux stuff, but that isn't one of the ones that I caught, actually.
It was very good. You got to see a few sides of it. It's funny, the moments everyone talks about aren't the moments I remember from it. There's 3 bits I remember from it. One was Jimmy, as he had clubs in the 50s and 60s in Leeds, and before that, I think, actually. He had connections, and it was never fully elaborated on what these connections were, but when Louis Theroux first arrived at his house, Jimmy Savile hands him a piece of paper, and he says, "Is this you?" And it's got, and on the paper, it didn't show obviously, but it's got all his details on it. I mean, date of birth, national insurance number, phone numbers, everything. And he said, "How did you get this?" He said, "I needed to check you out. I needed to make sure you were okay." So immediately you think, oh my goodness, this guy's more savvy than he seems. Then halfway through the documentary, there's a bit, Louis Theroux's gone to bed. The producer is in the kitchen making a cup of tea, and it's just Jimmy Savile in his front room on his own, and he kind of drops the veil and he talks to the camera for a bit. And he said a few things about himself and how much he was enjoying actually speaking to Louis. And he said, but I would never tell them that. And then the producer comes back in and he says, oh, you'll have to edit all that bit out. I was just swearing at the camera. And then at the very end, it was quite touching, as they were saying goodbye, he gave Louis Theroux a card with his phone number on it, with Jimmy's own phone number on it. And he said, why have you given me this? And he said, well, you're flying high at the moment, and people are doing everything for you. But there might come a time when things aren't going so well, and if that happens, give me a call.
Oh.
And it was just marvellous. It's also, people make a lot of the, I mean, he was a peculiar bloke, and he would go and spend a night in a mortuary, just to, I'm not sure if it was to sort of remind himself of the preciousness of life or what, but you know, that's quite surreal. And he kept his mother's room exactly the way it was when she died. That was something that Louis Theroux was quite uneased by, that he had to sleep in the Duchess, as he called it, in the Duchess's bed.
Wow. Yeah, that doesn't
the clothes
sound...
still in the wardrobe, things like that.
That doesn't sound easy.
No, but people have suggested maybe he was gay and what have you, but he said in the documentary, he talked about he used to take girls for the weekend down to his mother's caravan because he didn't want to disrespect his mother by bringing them home. And the issue came up because they said, because he said in a few times, although he does all his charity work, he didn't like children.
Right.
And Louis Theroux pressed him on this in the very Louis Theroux way, where he manages to ask things without actually asking anything.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I know I do like kids, but I say I don't because it stops people saying things. So he basically kept up that image, but he'd go to children's hospitals with bags full of expensive toys and things. He paid for it out of his own pocket and raised so much money for charity.
Yeah.
But because he was very aware of what the media might do with the fact he did lots for kids. And he made out he didn't like kids, and he just did it because he felt sorry for them. But he had his ballroom clubs where that was something that got a lot of press coverage. He said about that he would, if anyone was causing aggro in his clubs, he would take them down to the basement and have them tied to a chair, and he and a couple of his heavies would work them over. Yeah. To let them know not to do it again.
Yeah. I'd read that previously.
I don't think anyone could really have a cross word to say about him. They may have not enjoyed his shows or what have you, but some of the stuff he did. I mean, he supposedly rose over £5 million for charity.
It's crazy, isn't it?
No. For years, he was honorary president of the physically handicapped and the able-bodied community, and raised over £40 million for that, which is astonishing. There seems to be a genuine sadness amongst journalists, celebrities, actors on Twitter and just around the internet. I suppose he would have been a part of 2, maybe 3 generations, childhoods or youth. So there's a lot of warm feeling towards him, and rightfully so, I think. I mean, regardless of his eccentricities, and there were several, I really, I think I said with the Amy Winehouse, I don't often get moved by celebrity passing, but this quite upset me yesterday.
Right.
When I heard about this. I mean, this is, I think this is a story we'll leave this on. It was a great one. In November 2007, he was mugged by a fan who made off with his glasses whilst in a Leeds hotel. According to Savile, he was walking down a corridor of the Queen's Hotel around midnight after attending a function at the hotel. Just to add, it's only in the later years he started using hotels because he used to park his caravan in the car park or outside the front of hotels and stay in his caravan for years.
Right.
Because I forget it was, that's right, he went, on Louis Theroux, they went to a place, he used to go walking up a mountain once a year.
Right, okay.
And all the crew were in this B&B, but he parked his caravan outside the B&B and stayed in there. But anyway, yes, as he was walking back to the hotel room after attending a function, he became aware of a woman walking beside him. He assumed the woman was going to hug him, but instead she reached for his glasses before sprinting off down the corridor. He later said, "I thought it was marvellous. It was just like old times." He promised his assailant a box of chocolates for giving him a 1960s thrill in 2007. Which he didn't seem to take himself seriously for all the eccentricities and for the much parodied perspective of him. He conducted himself with a lot more grace than a lot of people.
So notice the sort of celebrity worship aspect of it, his ultimate. For example, hey, he spent the night in mortuaries, because that's something everybody does and stuff. So, well, he was a celebrity, so it must have been okay. So let's invent a story that makes it okay. I mean, don't get me wrong. I totally understand contemplating death in order to appreciate life. But notice how he has to invent a story to tell himself it's okay. It's okay that he did that. Of course it is. Anybody else would be insane or something like that. But he was a celebrity, so it must have been okay. Now, first of all, go to your local mortuary and tell them, hey, I'm Joe Q. Public. I'm just a regular good old-fashioned guy. I want to spend the night here. Is that okay? Yeah, try that. Try that. Well, he not only could because he's a celebrity and he's of a special class of people, but because he was a total insider and had connections. So he could go to a mortuary and say, hey, I'm going to spend the night here. And they're like, well, of course. Oh, of course. Well, we come to find out he wasn't doing that because of his contemplation of life and appreciation for life, but because he was a necrophiliac. Yeah. Now, Savile was also known for his charitable works with children. And isn't that wonderful? He helped kids so much. He was so instrumental in raising funds and being charitable towards them. But we find out that he was really involved in that to have access to children because he was a pedophile. And that's something pedophiles seek out, is all these organizations pertaining to children. Foster homes, boys clubs, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, you name it. You name it. And so you think again about the initial statements about the documentary, and you realize what is really being said. Oh, Jimmy Savile proved to the guy that he had all this information on him. Well, how does some kind of goofy comedian type guy gain that sort of information?